From the Middle is a founding member of Odd Pods Media. Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to episode number 295 of From the Middle. We are three middle-class guys living in the middle of America in the middle chapters of our lives with points of view somewhere in the middle. And this week, in a classic WWE style matchup, Kendall has tagged out because he's on vacation, and John is joining us back from episode number 260. So Corey, John, and I have a great conversation about barbecue competitions and cook-offs, a little bit about Dungeons and Dragons, some stereotypes about Americans that are both fun and silly and playful and not mean-spirited, and we talk a little bit about some travel stereotypes. This is a really fun episode. Enjoy.
Oh, for the love.
Sorry, just clearing my Mountain Dew hole.
I got my phone hole cleaned today.
That's where you keep it? You're so cerebral and you're so developed and evolved.
So John is back. John was with us on episode number 260. And I wish my memory was that good, but we looked it up before. Not because I didn't cherish the episode. There's just been far too many to keep track. John, welcome back. You've got
Thanks.
a great...
I knew exactly what episode it was. I remember it so fondly.
Yeah.
I believe it was a Wednesday afternoon.
Sure.
Yeah, it was great.
The sun was shining. There was four clouds in the sky. I know we were texting beforehand, and I said, you don't need to be starstruck. We're just normal people. So welcome back.
Yeah. Well, no, I remember last time I found myself sitting there just like watching the show and then realizing, oh, shit, I'm
on this thing. You are our most loyal and probably most delusional listener, sir. How does it feel to be a violinist on our Titanic?
You forgot to mention best looking, funniest.
Yeah. All those things too.
Yeah, we hadn't gotten to your full list of credentials. You're also co-host of an incredible podcast, Grab 'em in the Brisket. You've done so many great episodes. You do so much better than us at the social media game. You're killing it over there. Incredible guests, incredible content. We've plugged your show before, but haven't done it enough justice. So not only do you listen to our insanity, but you have like a legitimately phenomenal show that you're a part of. So if people don't listen to that, they should go do that.
And you've stepped up your game with the studio. It looks like you got a Joe Rogan situation over there. You're like toggling between camera views, like proper mics, a big monitor for everyone to look at. Like, I'm jelly.
So we've switched. It's the same studio company or whatever. We switched. It's been about a year and a half now, I think. Has it been that long? Something like that. And he kept moving locations, but where he's at now is fantastic. And it just gotten to the point, honestly, with the show where it was like, I think the guys realized John's getting tired of doing all this stuff. Like, he's tired of doing all the editing and all the making sure everything's synced up and getting the guests on. I mean, I still line up all the guests and everything, but I don't have to worry about making sure that they're, Skyped in or whatever you want to call it. So they went out and found a place and they were like, let's just try it. I was like, all right, we'll go try it one time. Of course, I was like, this isn't going to be good. And I love it. So it's great.
Yeah. It looks great. Everything you're producing is awesome. So keep up the good work. You inspire us, plebeians, podcast plebeians. So how you been, man? What's going on in your world? I hear there's some exciting news.
I don't know if it's exciting for everybody. It's exciting for me. We've been trying to do more cook-offs this year. So this past weekend, it was kind of a last minute thing. Somebody reached out to us and said, hey, we're doing this small little cook-off up north of Houston, about an hour from us. And it was just a burger cook-off and a chicken wing cook-off. So that was it. Normally we do these ones where it's brisket, chicken, ribs, and a bunch of other stuff. But this was just chicken wings and burgers. What the hell? I guess let's go try it. It's a pretty low entry fee. So we went up there and we turned in this burger that we've actually done on social media before. It was like a Little Debbie's honey buns on a burger. It was a double smash burger, grilled onions, grilled bacon, some grilled jalapenos on there. They were phenomenal. We thought for sure, we were like, that's the one. Because we went around tasting others, and there's a lot of good burgers. We were like, well, think outside the box. This has got to be it. That was not it. We ended up fourth in the burger. Really thought we had it with the burger, but then with the chicken wings, we tasted a bunch of people's chicken wings too, and we went really basic. Same thing we do on our barbecue competitions, because a lot of people were doing like garlic parmesans and all these different kinds of things, which were tasty. But the thing about barbecue is you only got to make one judge go, and you pretty much shot yourself in the foot. So we thought, no, we'll just go middle of the road. If everybody goes, yeah, that's pretty good, then we're probably going to be pretty good. And sure enough, the one that we thought was going to kill everybody ended up in second place. Good friend of ours. And then we were like, oh shit, maybe we got a chance here. And sure enough, we got the first place in the chicken wings. Big prize money, free grill. Went home and drank ourselves into a stupor.
Yeah.
Congratulations. That's awesome, man.
Yeah, it was super fun.
Yeah, I of course assumed it was a very nice grill relative to the competition, but one that you would take home and like chuck over your shoulder into a pile of grills that you have, piling up by your house because it doesn't stack up. But the cash is nice, the recognition is nice.
Yeah.
And I also need to try your chicken and the burger, both, but also the chicken.
Yes.
Literally award winning.
It is. It's award winning. Yeah, well, swing by the house. I'll cook some up for you tomorrow.
Great, perfect. And the burger, still also the burger though, too.
I've talked before about how I love jumping into a culture I know little to nothing about. I think I told the story of the very first time I went to Texas Motor Speedway for an IndyCar race. And I'd never been to an IndyCar race, but we had like club seats and pit access, and we could get right up on the pit crew and everything. So I would love to ask you a little bit about this, like barbecue competition, these cook-off culture. Like, what is the ratio of those who are there to cook and compete, the families of those people, and then just people who have nothing to do with it and are just there to enjoy good food? Like, who's the audience?
It really varies depending upon the competition, like where you're at, So this one, they wanted to have more public showing out there. It was the very first time they'd ever done this competition. I would say they did not get the showing they wanted, but there was still, a decent amount of public milling around, tasting people's food. And they actually did have a part of the competition you could do, feed the public, like it was a People's Choice type award. We did not sign up for that because they told us you have to feed 500 people if you sign up for it. I was like, we don't have the time or energy, and we don't invest that much into this thing. We still ended up probably in the top 5 for People's Choice just because we let people taste some of our other stuff we had. So yeah, it just depends upon the cook-off. So that one is whatever. Some of the smaller VFW type cook-offs, there's a lot of those, and usually it's mostly just the cook teams and their friends and family that come out. I mean, it's still kind of a party. You're still walking around talking to everybody. Everybody's super friendly. They call it your barbecue family because everybody out there, they treat you. I mean, if I forgot something and I needed, like, I don't know, whatever, something I might need, I don't know, spread butter or something, and I didn't have it, I could walk over to anybody out there and just say, hey, I forgot, whatever it is, and they would totally hook me up if they had it. Having said that, if you go to the bigger ones like Houston Rodeo, or when we just did Austin Rodeo, that's a party. There's going to be like thousands of people out there walking around. And you guys should come to that. You guys should come down for Austin next year. That's a blast.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I imagine, not to compare you to, say, I don't know, a model train show, but like if I just say the word model train show, Northwest Ohio, the only guys that are there are the other guys with their model trains. Nobody's going like, hey, what do you want to do Saturday? I think there's a model train show. So I didn't know if it was like what's the term? Like a circle jerk, like everybody's just there to like try each other's meat. Like, I don't know. Or is it like it just drums up a lot of, I know that's a little crass for our show.
There are way too many puns in this question.
Wow.
I know. So I'm not belittling or demeaning. I'm just saying, is it like there's a ton of other people just there because they cook and they want to try other people's stuff? But you're saying it depends on the show. So like the last one you mentioned, thousands of passersby and public. So that's cool.
Yeah, those ones are probably the most fun. They're also the most difficult to do well at, because usually there's like that one, there was 230 teams or something there.
Wow.
Yeah, where this past weekend there was like 25 teams.
And then judging, I'm assuming, also varies by size of show, but like, are these credible culinary critics, other barbecuers, radio DJ that they brought in because he knows nothing and it's just whichever one he likes best, People's Choice Award?
It totally depends on the cook-off too. So we have different sanctioning bodies, they call them. So the biggest one in the world is probably KCBS. I don't know if you ever heard of that, Kansas City Barbecue Society. They're all over the country. They're probably in other countries too, and their judges all have to be certified to judge. Basically, same thing with like the State Cook-Off Association. And a lot of them you have to be certified. A lot of the ones down in Texas, they don't do that. They want the public to judge your food. They want regular people to come in and judge your food and give you a score. Which I like. I think it's cool. It'd be nice to get the judges too, because the judges, the certified judges, they give you more specific feedback. The only problem is I feel like they're all kind of trained the same, so it makes everybody's barbecue end up tasting the same. Everybody starts looking for the same thing and doing the same thing. Which, I mean, that can happen a little bit down here in Texas too, because once you hear somebody using something or other, you're gonna start trying to use that, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. So again, it just depends upon where you're cooking and who's running that competition.
So I'm sure there's a variety of answers depending on the people and the competition, etc. But for you personally, when you go to this stuff, are you like super in the zone on the actual cooking and the preparation and the delivery, or do you feel so like this is kind of second nature? Sure, I'm going to pay attention to what I'm doing, but also I want to see what other people are cooking. I want to try other stuff. I want to
have a few drinks, have a good time.
What's the mixture for you? Are you like totally in the zone till your part's done, or do you feel pretty second nature?
Yeah, so if it's a cook-off that we're competing in and we signed up for it, we had to pay to be in, for the most part, we're dialed in. Like, we're not going to screw around with this. So most competitions are on Saturday. You get there Friday. We might have a few beers Friday night. We're not going to get lit because we got to wake up super early Saturday. And we try not to drink anything until we turn in our last whatever, usually it's brisket. As soon as we turn in that brisket the brisket box, then we start partying and walking around and talking to other people and see what's going on. Although I will say this one that we just did, we didn't do that at all. We rolled up, we started drinking as soon as we got there. So it was a chicken wings and burgers. We were just like, screw this. This is what we'd be doing on a Saturday in front of our house anyway. We're just hanging out.
Yeah, we're slapping honey buns on this food. Let's have a good time.
Exactly.
We're not even trying. It's oatmeal cream pies. Let's go.
We're not gonna take ourselves too seriously, on this one, and it's okay. We're gonna enjoy it.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Most of the guys, and early on when we first started doing it 5 or 6, 7 years ago, we'd party all night Friday. We'd half-ass it through Saturday because we were so sick and hungover. And at some point we were like, why are we paying to do this if we're not trying to win? And it definitely improved our placement, how we did at the competition. So
you had if you're not first, you're last moment, and then kick things into a higher gear. Yeah, let's track it.
I'm thinking of all those sports movies we grew up with in the 90s where like there's that one team and like all their track suits match and their coach is a dick. Like who's the barbecue like Mercedes of Formula One, or like the Patriots of the NFL? Like everybody hates them, but they have a good track record and they're the ones to beat. Like who's that team?
Honestly, I don't think that at least not that I know of anybody that everybody hates, but there's definitely some teams out there that are, when they roll in, you're like, well, shit, I guess we're shooting for second now. Like there's some really good teams out there.
They have like matching vehicles, and like their barbecue trailer thing matches their truck. It's got a scheme that goes across both, and
there's a lot of them. And most of the teams are just one guy and his wife or something like that. But those teams, they compete, some of them 50 times a year. Like they're out there every single weekend. This is their job, and they mop the floor, people.
You reminded me of the Little Giants with the Cowboys team.
Yeah.
Yeah, is Ed
I
O'Neill.
was also thinking, who's in Cool Runnings? Who's the team that they like? They're is the Canadians?
It's the Swiss.
Oh, the Swiss. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically that. So if we're not gonna throw any, call out any specific people, is there a sort of, is it maybe the Texas non-Texas in the sense that you said like the Texas cook-offs? Oh, we'd rather the people be the judge versus the other one. Does it feel like other competitions are like, oh well, our critics are actual? Is there a little bit of snootiness between some of the competitions or some of the regions of the U.S. that are doing barbecue, or is it like, nah, mostly everybody's chill?
So among like regional barbecue, there's definitely some shit talking, right?
A little bit of snobbery.
Yeah, but I would say that's mostly not the competition guys. That's mostly just people, some dude in Kansas online saying Kansas has the best barbecue, and you hear that shit all the time. Which is why on our social media we're constantly poking fun at other states and saying Texas is king basically. When it's all the same. I mean, it's not the same, but it's getting so like meshed together. Like guys from Texas are going to other places and cooking, and other places are coming here, and everybody's learning each other's barbecue. It's really become a mixing pot.
Yeah. It feels like even if you could have a definite bias for your own flavor or regionality or whatever, it doesn't change the fact that you're just gonna like some of the other stuff. Like you might still be like, yeah, I prefer this, but like, man, that's friggin' good. And it's nice to change pace a little bit sometimes and try something different. And so I feel like that's gotta be a thing. Like, I don't mind the vinegar every now and then, or I don't mind the, whatever. I don't know.
Yeah. There's probably some guys more sticking the mud about it than I am, but yeah, I'm with you. I love trying different sauces, different rubs, different methods of people cooking shit. I'm pretty open minded about that crap.
Well, you've mentioned before that you might join me on a work trip, and I found this spot out in Seattle. It's a guy from Texas, Jack Timmons, started Jack's Barbecue. I think he's got 5 or 7 locations now.
Okay.
And I'm not a barbecue connoisseur like you are, but I got to take you there, and we're gonna like get down on some meats, and you're gonna tell me where it ranks.
Let's plan it. Let's go.
Okay.
I'm down. I fly for free, man.
I know, and I'm not going to be going to Seattle much longer, so we need to make this happen. Maybe not. Jury's still out. Anyway, in other news, it's good seeing you. Thanks for joining us, and congrats on the win. That's awesome. You can send the crappy grill you don't want over to my house. It's fine.
Yeah, it's on its way.
Because if everybody can agree on anything, it's the Midwest is certainly not doing actual barbecuing. Ours is just the burgers and hot dogs on a grill. There's no barbecue sauce involved. There's no barbecue rubs involved. It's not that. So, and it's still good. I'm not saying we don't have good burgers and hot dogs, but it's not the same.
Yeah. Next time I'm in Columbus, you guys need to take me to whatever the best barbecue place is.
I don't even know that I know what that would be, Dylan.
We'd have
What's
to
the
do some
best? Interesting. That's sad that we don't even know.
One of the most recent things I text you about, John, was there's a chain, a very small regional chain called Cafe Zupas, and it's out of Utah. And there's a handful of weird locations in like the Midwest and a few other places. And there's one about 25 minutes from our house that we go to because it's attached to a big mall area. And I don't know, you've probably experienced things infinitely better, but from my layperson Midwest, our barbecues are burgers and hot dogs perspective, they have a brisket sandwich with white barbecue sauce and tomato and something else. It's really good. Like I don't know that it's technically good, and I don't know that a KSBB certified adjudicated adjunct professor of the Oklahoma College of whatever would say it's good, but like I eat it and go, dang, that's really freaking good. And so I also want you to try Cafe Zupa. So if you're near, just to weigh in, just to be like, Dylan, it's a solid 4 out of 10. At least then I'll know. And I'll go, okay, I'm going to reset my expectations for how good this is. And now I know that that's like a 4. And if you tell me, hey, it's like a 7.5, I'll go, okay, I wasn't way off base. So if anybody else has had Cafe Zupas and wants to weigh in on social media, let us know. But I don't know that we even have enough chain experience, like regional or restaurant chain, to even point you in the right direction. So we'll need some help from the Columbus people to give us some good tips on where to get good barbecue. And hopefully it won't be disappointing. If anything, we've probably tried really unhealthy and delicious burgers around here and have done that well. So we can at least probably point you to some good burgers, if nothing else.
Well, speaking of other cultures, you said your wife's away, and you said you were going to do a little D&D with your kids tonight. I'm curious your thoughts on the D&D thing. But that goes way back to one of like our first 10 episodes when we talked about that.
I don't remember what we said about it.
Yeah, it's been a minute. Well, growing up in strong Christian homes, it was like, that's how the devil gets in, and the whole satanic panic of the 80s and all that.
Okay. I'm recollecting. Yeah, and I was the same because I grew up Pentecostal, so I didn't have. I mean, I wasn't allowed to read a Ninja Turtles book, so it was bad.
Yeah,
I mean, the Ninja Turtles was bad, not my upbringing. Yeah, so I never played D&D growing up. When I maybe like 5 years ago, my sons wanted to play D&D. They're like, hey, let's try it. And they were both in high school, maybe junior high. I don't remember.
Was it Stranger Things that got him into it?
It could have been. It could have been right around that time.
Yeah.
And I knew one of my buddies, Matt from our team, played D&D, and I was like, "Hey, you know anything about this?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm a dungeon master." So I was like, "You want to do that for us?" And he's like, "Sure." So we played for, I don't know, maybe about a year and a half until, I mean, he just kind of played by the book, like how you're supposed to play, I guess, because at some point we went in the wrong door and all died, got killed by a dragon. We were just like, my kids are like, "What just happened, Dad?" I was like, "Well, Matt sucks. That's what happened." So we played a little bit longer after that and then kind of dropped it. But at some point, my son Luke decided that he really liked it. So he started buying all the stuff and doing the dungeon master thing and playing with his friends. And then just recently, his girlfriend decided she wanted to try it. So he started the new campaign and invited my youngest son to play. And so I was like, "Yeah, I'm in." So we've been playing the last few weeks. It's fun. I mean, it's weird, it's super nerdy, but it's fun.
It's fun. It's family time. You get some snacks going. How long do you participate in the campaign? Are you like a one night or like a couple times a month? What do you?
Yeah. So he tries to do at least once a week. I think he would do it more probably if we were all available. We've been doing about once a week. And for me, I like to go up to maybe 2.5, 3 hours. Like that's pretty good. Tonight we only went about an hour and a half because I told him, "Hey, I gotta be done. I got stuff to do tonight. You know, I'm hitting the big time."
I'm a celebrity guest on the world's greatest centrist podcast.
Exactly. But a few days ago we played, and it was like 5 hours. I was like, we gotta wrap this thing up. I gotta go to bed. Like he's like, "Good." I don't remember. I think it was Saturday. I think it was Friday night, and I had to cook off the next day. I was like, "I don't care. I gotta go to bed. We're either you wrap it up, or I'm having my character jump off a cliff."
Yeah. Oh no, my character fell into a pit and died. Okay, good night.
Exactly.
You're like, "Son, what's the worst possible decision my character could make right now? Just asking for a friend." Like if you were like sure to die in the next move or two, how does that? What does that look like?
Tell my ex. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
What I love about them doing that is him wanting to get buddies together and play and do something a little bit different, because it's a stereotype that kids these days only want to be on their phones, and it's fine. It's certainly not true for all children, but I understand the stereotype. But it's also funny when I see people starting to do that. Like there was this reel of this kid doing the thing with the ping pong ball where you bounce it off one pan and you're trying to get it into a cup, and then you add another pan and you add another pan. For this to work, clearly a certain number of hours was spent doing this activity for this kid trying to get the ping pong ball in the cup. Yes, granted, he put it on social media, but one of the top comments was like, "What a waste of time," or something. And I thought, the whole spirit of this is get kids off their phone, but then it's like, but not like that. Do it the way that I think you should do it. So if nothing else, I appreciate when kids find things that are different. Not that I'm being critical of anybody on their phone, But it is nice when they find ways to connect with friends and do something different. I've seen articles of all these squirt gun fights right now kids are doing in schools or something, and they're finding ways to like do squirt gun attacks, and I'm like, that feels like good
Yeah.
spirited, kind of silly, kid friendly fun. So good on him for leaning into something that he enjoys with his friends.
Yeah, he has been, and the phone thing. It's funny because he apparently this whole campaign that he's started with us is online somewhere, so he can ask Chat GPT things. So we'll be in the middle of something like, "Hey, we want to make our character ask him something," and he'll be like typing it in. What would Chat GPT, how should he respond basically, and it'll just come up, and then he'll go into whatever voice he wants to use, and be like, he says,
That's sweet.
yeah, it's pretty cool.
Up leveling your gaming with generative AI. I love it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He says, "Your character did fall down the well. Good night, Dad." That's awesome.
Well, if your character wants to do something other than fall down a well, they could listen to this podcast hosted by friends of ours in Odd Pods Media. We'll be right back.
Hey, this is Grabbing Brisket Podcast. Join us every Monday where we talk about the latest trends in barbecue, interviews with world top pitmasters, celebrity cooks,
Ooh, like Wee Man from Jackass.
and musicians.
Like Rich O'Toole?
So check us out. We do beer reviews, barbecue fails.
So many fires.
Dude, a lot of people just burn their houses down for no reason.
We also talk about cocaine hippos versus Beth Gators,
Learn how to make some tailgate gravy.
altercations with Texas Rangers.
People throwing Reese's peanut butter cups.
Yeah, so check out grabthebrisket.com for podcast info, viral social media posts, and so much more.
So we were talking a little bit about John and Corey, you both being well traveled. I stumbled across some articles that are about more playful and silly American stereotypes. And since you both have traveled, I think it would be fun to just throw some of the comments out and you both can react. And I'll preface by saying this is intentionally done this week because there's now 2 Midwesterners and 1 Southerner, 2 of the 3 of which have traveled. So this isn't one part of the country attacking another. It's the spirit of being friendly and fun and Americans making fun of themselves.
And a Southerner from California originally. So we've got that added layer.
That's true. So we've got all of these things at play that makes it fun and silly and not mean-spirited and any part of the country bashing another part of the country. So I'm just going to start with some funny American stereotypes and you all can react. These could be like things Americans have about themselves or other people Americans have about other parts of the country. So it could be a mixture of things, but just things that we kind of think are funny, depending on how the different people have responded in the thread. So one silly stereotype Americans joke about themselves is we say that history started on July 4th, 1776. Everything before that was a mistake. That especially around the 4th of July, that sentiment, I don't know how many people actually believe that, but it does feel like a lot of people have fun with the 4th of July in regards to that kind of sentiment. Is that your experience in the South, John?
Oh, for sure. Obviously, down in the South, everyone's, I would just call that patriotic. I mean, that's just what it is. I mean,
Yeah.
It's mostly accurate. I mean, it's probably about right.
Yeah. Well, and what I like about that is the stereotype that we really love to put up our American flag everywhere versus maybe some other countries who are not as excited to put up flags on every telephone pole along Main Street and in every building, government building and school building and sporting event. And we really like to put those flags up. So I think it's another fun way we kind of lean into the patriotic thing. This one was interesting because the comments back to it basically keep arguing back and forth. So it starts, these are not my words. Most Southerners assume Northerners are all loudmouthed and rude. Most Northerners assume Southerners are all backwards and obsessed with John Deere. And then it kind of goes back and forth at like, no, the Southern ones are the loud ones and the Northern ones are the quiet ones. Back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. Any thoughts on that take?
Yeah, so I mentioned earlier, there's definitely some stereotypes as far as like up northeast, for sure. They're thought of as a little more coarse, I guess you could say, a little rougher around the edges, a little, yeah, they're just saying exactly what they think, a little less filter, where the South might be a little slower to snap at you, or maybe they are snapping at you, but it doesn't sound like it. They say it so sweet that you don't even notice it. You feel like they're being nice to you. They called you an idiot. You don't even realize it.
Is that the "Oh bless your heart"
It's
thing?
part of it, yeah, for sure. That's one of them.
Is that one of those layers?
Yeah, yeah.
Corey, have you had any experiences in all of your travels that would?
It's hard. I'm trying not to like categorize your categories, but it's hard to say like north, south, because I think big cities and small towns too, like that's another breakdown. And then there's like the south, like I would say the Carolinas and Georgia and Alabama, Mississippi, and then there's like south and out west, so like Texas. And what is north? Is that like North Dakota or like New York and the New England states? So I'm trying not to get too picky about it. But yes, generally, that would feel true. I love referencing a book that I once read that is built on the premise that a lot of current cultures in regions are based on the climate of that place. So, to John's point about places being coarse or a little more to the point or direct, those are typically colder places where you have fewer time when the weather is nice for you to go out and do things historically, thinking back hundreds of years. So when you were out and about, it was like just the facts because versus in the South where you're outside all the time, it's much more communal. Everybody's raising everybody else's kids. There's time to talk and visit. You don't need to be as curt or succinct because you've got time to talk. Quick example. If you go into a hardware store in New York City and say, ding, ding, that was the door. How y'all doing? They'd be like, what do you want?
Exactly.
Like, why are you making small talk? Versus if you go into a hardware store in the South, ding, ding, and go, where are your hammers? They'd be like, well, he was rude. So he didn't
Can you use that accent the rest of the time, please?
Because he didn't say how. So you could extrapolate that to other countries, but like to use the US. I've heard that it seems to track and has been my experience for the most part.
Well, and this is why we're doing it. It's okay to say, I think those stereotypes are wrong. I think what it really is the rural urban thing, but there is some layer to the north south thing. And I lived in Louisville, Kentucky for a bit, and I can tell you things are slower there, but I mostly blame the length of the stoplights. I think that forces everyone to just take a lot more time to do things. And so it might not be the people, it might be the lights. Okay, people think Californians are laid back and relaxed. As an LA native, I can guarantee you we are not as chill as people think. Spend 1 hour on the 405 or 101 and you'll see we're a bunch of maniacs.
That feels more about a traffic issue than a climate issue. Like that's the notoriously next to Atlanta, that's some of the worst traffic in the United States. It's horrific. Yeah, that's got to just tick everybody off constantly.
Yeah, I've heard the stereotype like everybody's a surfer from California. They're all just chill. And I think it depends upon where you're at in California. Like you go down to San Diego, yeah, there's a lot of laid back people. Like, man, you're right. You get into like LA, San Francisco, Bay Area, they're crazy. They're practically New Yorkers. They're a little snotty. Like they're probably worse than New Yorkers, and I mean that in the nicest way.
You see, you just did it. You did. It was a criticism, but in a nice way. And like, I'm endeared to you more now, having said it.
Just saying, like when I'm, like I said, I'm a flight attendant, so when we're flying around, California gets the worst rap. We literally have flight attendants like, I don't want to fly to the West Coast. They're just, and it's because they're a little more demanding. They're a little more. They expect a little more. They might like the running joke is that they're gonna want a cranberry with a splash of club soda, only 2 ice cubes. If you give me 3, I'm sending it back. They're just a little more particular.
Who is sending back drinks on an airplane? Are we serious?
They're sending them back, or they're just leaving them sitting there and saying, "That's not."
This could be a fun side game. Is like, what are the stereotypes between flight attendants, flight crews about certain regions? So, So maybe that's a secondary question to Dylan's prompts.
Yeah, and I'm realizing as I'm reading another one too, there's a whole element of these that are just purely like visual evidence of I'll read the next one and then I'll say more, but like some things it's literally a see it to believe it. Like you don't get a sense of what a place is like or what it is until you actually are in it. And then you're like, oh, I think I get it. So that somebody says, everybody thinks Alaskans are all crazy and live out in the woods and are like hunters. That's just not true. Most of them live in Anchorage. And that probably feels like one of those things where you fly in and get to Anchorage, or you're on a cruise and you go, oh, 98% of the population is right here. Okay. In my head, I'm thinking igloos, Eskimos, bear hunting, woods, lake fishing. I'm thinking that's in my head what everyone in Alaska is doing.
I don't think we're allowed to say Eskimos anymore. I think we have to say like,
I
really
don't-
cold fishermen.
Yeah, native Alaskans, Native Americans in the area. I don't know if that's PC or not, but I think that's what happens to people. You do the same thing maybe with Colorado. You live in a city and then you go hiking on a mountain and then you go back to the city. Or Montana, you might think ranch, and then you get there and maybe it is the thing that you thought it was going to be, and then maybe you're like, oh, now that I'm here, okay, I'm tracking. Are there any places that you've had like that? Either of you have had like that? You got there and went, okay, this is.
I remember talking about this before, and while John thinks of his answer, but I remember going to Australia for the first time, and I literally thought like didgeridoos, wallabies, kangaroos, like rescuers down under. Like there was going to be a really tan guy with a safari hat, and he's like, "Good eye," and I was like, "Oh, it's just I'm in Melbourne and Sydney, and it's just a big city that looks like every other city I've been to." It certainly has flavors of different things that feel different, but for the most part, especially if you're staying in big cities, probably like John is as well, you don't get that piece of it. Every time I go to London, I'm like chimney, and I'm like, nope, it's just an old city. Yes, there are parts of it that are the iconic, stereotypical things, but for the most part, most places aren't as caricatured as you think they are in your head when you're flying there, and you're like, it's gonna be so wild.
But sometimes they do talk like that, don't they?
Yeah, that's true. How about you, John?
Yeah, I think it's same. You go to them, they all feel very similar. I mean, like you said, they're a little bit different from each other, but they're not going to be like, I don't know. Like when you go to New York, you don't feel like everybody's talking like this, and you don't even notice it really. I mean, some of them are a little snappier, like I mentioned before, but yeah, I don't feel like you get a lot of that. Maybe it's just where I'm staying and going straight to the hotels and whatnot, and they're all treating us pretty much the same. But I don't know. I did meet one weird guy when I went to Columbus one time. But outside of that, it's been
Fair. Yeah.
great.
So let me use some stereotype about like your region, because I hear about Dallas being essentially kind of, I'm going to be harsh for sake of discussion time, a little bit of an urban wasteland, a little bit like just rural sprawl forever versus like Austin. Would those be pretty wild contrast for anyone flying into Texas in those two places? Or is it like, nah, they mostly feel pretty similar, but there's some districts that, are a little artsier or a little less? Like, does that feel like a stark contrast to you?
I mean, they're going to feel similar. I'm in Houston, but they're going to feel similar. But Austin is definitely different than the rest of them. I would say it's kind of the weird one, the artsy one, the music. They've got a lot of good food in Austin, barbecue and whatnot. Yeah, I guess they all have their own kind of vibe. The four main cities, anyway. San Antonio, to me, always strikes me as super family friendly. They get the Riverwalk. There's a lot of history there. It just feels. Houston's just huge. It's enormous. People don't realize it's the fourth biggest city. It just goes on. You can drive 2 hours, still be in Houston. It's just crazy. And there's a lot of good food in Houston, too, obviously. And then Dallas is like, I don't know. Dallas is like South Oklahoma.
Yeah. Well, and I don't mind. I don't say that to like knock Dallas because there might be plenty to do, but I think even people would have described downtown Columbus that way for a long time. Like totally corporate, urban wasteland, nothing to do immediately downtown until they started building like the Nationwide Arena and some of that stuff. And then the Short North, like an artsier district with boutiques. Downtown Columbus felt very barren after the offices closed. And so that was even a criticism locally that it's like, if you're going to do something in Columbus, you're probably going to leave the immediate downtown and go find something else. So that's something I've heard about Dallas, that it can feel like it's just a lot of buildings and offices and things, and then the offices clear out, and then it's kind of like, okay, night's over.
I will say that, like, and it's probably true for John, who, like, we're going to the big airports, we're going to the probably popular hotels, and like not doing a lot of sightseeing. I don't get to do a lot of sightseeing, but when I do have an extra half day or day, I will ask the locals, like, what's a cool spot to go? Because I want the like rich something different. So even a place like Dallas that is very corporate and it is very big city, I will say, like, where's like the cultural hub? So for us in Columbus, that'd be like High Street or Short North or German Village or something like that. So for Dallas, that's Deep Ellum. Deep Ellum is like this strip where it's like really good restaurants, really good music, cool, lively bars, people hanging out in the street. It's the Bourbon Street of Dallas. It's a really cool area. Or in Melbourne, it's like these places called the alleyways, which are like these hidden alleys between the streets that connect all the streets with really interesting food and restaurants and shopping that looks like Diagon Alley from Harry Potter. So like those places probably exist, but if a person is just going to all the touristy spots and not like the rich cultural centers or interesting points of interest, that would probably feel true. Just to play devil's advocate.
Yeah, and that's probably the case. I will say, if you're going into Dallas and you can't find something to do, it is a huge ass city. Enormous. There's got to be something that you can do there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's a great example of why you have the conversation, because it's if you've only heard things and you don't really know, then you're stuck going, I guess there's nothing in Dallas. I've never been there and I don't know if I want to go there if people tell me there's nothing to do there. And so that's why it's fun to talk about, because you go, no. You got to take an Uber to this thing or go to that thing and you'll have plenty to do and you'll have a great time. And
there's always some publication like the Columbus Underground that's telling you like, hey, there's a bunch of drag queens doing a production of Happy Gilmore at this little box theater. And you're like, what? I didn't even know. And it's like, let's check that out because that sounds interesting.
That's fantastic. Yeah, next time you fly into Dallas, just jump in an Uber, drive south about 4 hours, and you'll be in Houston. You'll be fine.
Hey, you heard it directly from the regional source, so that's really good. Just when next time you're in Dallas, leave Dallas. Perfect. This is kind of a funny one, I think, about Americans in general. Cowboys is how the whole thing starts. When I visited Japan as part of an exchange program and everyone learned I was from the American Southwest, they assumed I was a cowboy and rode a horse to school every day. Which, granted, in the Southwest, wearing things like cowboy boots, hats, bootcut jeans is pretty common, but obviously still a wild stereotype that they all just thought I was a cowboy. So that one's kind of fun because I think we know that that's not true, but like horses are also very common in a huge chunks of the United States that families have a couple horses, they have a small ranch or a small farm or something. So for it to be specifically about the West, but is that just because maybe it feels so quintessentially American, like the old Wild West and the miners for the gold rush and just like your cattle ranch? And is that just that, like, or do you feel like you go places and you're like, okay, this is still really a thing? Like, I totally understand why the world views us as a bunch of cowboys. Because Corey, you've been to like Kansas, you've spent some time too in the middle of America. John, you've done a bunch of stuff in Texas and barbecue stuff. And let me ask it this way. Do you get the stereotype, or is it like, no, that's silly, that was 200 years ago?
I think it's like from old movies and TV and stuff like that. That's got to be where they're getting this, right? I mean, I don't know how else. I mean, sure, you're still people that ride horses, obviously. I mean, I could I'm driving to the airport, and it's like 15 minutes from my house, and I'm going through like it's the city. This is not suburbia even. It's like you're getting into the city. You still see like people riding their horses like up to the gas station. I'm like, all right, that's cool, but I don't think it's not a thing.
Yeah.
Well, you could just say the flip. The person from the southwest of the U.S. could say about those people in Japan, well, chances are that you are either a Japanese businessman in his 30s working for a large car manufacturer, an old Japanese fisherman hunched over, a teenage Japanese person walking around with all their friends going with like neon glowing headphones, or you're in the Yakuza. It's one of those four things. So which is it?
Yeah. You might be right with the bunch of old movies kind of thing. And yeah, I think as we discuss the playful parts of stereotypes, that like, I'm sure we do just the same thing right back in other countries. I like this one. Nearly every state thinks their closest state that they don't like has terrible or the worst drivers. So if you're in Ohio, you would say like, "Oh, Michigan has the worst drivers." Or if you're Texas, I don't know if it's Oklahoma. Who do you all blame for the bad driving? Is it Louisiana? Is it Oklahoma? New Mexico?
We have terrible drivers in Houston.
Oh, okay. So it's
Yeah,
like you keep that road rage local.
yeah. You see it on the news all the time, and it's like road rage. But honestly, just driving or flying around, going to different cities. New York's awful, and Los Angeles is probably the worst. I mean, they're terrible drivers.
Yeah. So
That one feels true for me.
do you feel like it's often the states that you visit, the people there say it's always the next city or the next state?
Yeah, I was going to say that works. That you could say like every state has a nearby state that's like the redheaded stepchild state that everybody just shits on that one state. So it's driving, it's their grubbier, they're the bad ones. We know what's up here.
Right. Yeah. As far as the driving goes, I think it's kind of. I definitely see some of that depending upon where I'm at, but a lot of times when I'm talking to different people or flying around, they're always saying like their state or their city is like people from Houston always say, oh, Houston has the worst drivers. Or if you're in LA or you're talking to somebody that might be based out there, they're going to say LA has the worst. As far as the redheaded stepchild thing, yeah, for sure. I feel like every state has that other state. If you're anywhere around California, they're definitely talking about California. Like and the running joke in old joke in Texas is why doesn't Texas fall off into the Gulf? It's because Oklahoma sucks. It's just is everybody. Yeah, you're right. Every state has another state that they like to poke and jab fun at. When probably that state's so close to them, they're probably more similar to each other than any of the other ones.
That's funny. Yeah,
Which is why we should all just get along.
Yeah, that's great. I thought that's a funny observation that it's always the other state, whether it's true or not. It's always like the nearby state you like least. I will say when I lived in Louisville, some of the worst drivers were the Ohio drivers in Kentucky driving down towards Louisville or out of Louisville back up to Ohio. Like some of the ones that I had the biggest reactions to, like, oh, whoa, what are you doing? Almost always the Ohio plates.
Interesting.
So I don't know if it was just the speed and a pace thing. A lot of like quick lane changes because they're driving through Cincinnati. It's that whole Cincinnati thing that you got to get through. And the Kentucky people are like, whoa, I'm just trying to get along here. And it was really interesting. It was like if I had that reaction 50 times, 48 out of 50 times it was Ohio plates in Kentucky.
So it's just out of state drivers, and then like whichever the nearest state is, they're the problem.
Yeah, so I can be a little more critical of ourselves on that one. Let's see. Oh, I saw the Colorado thing. The stereotype, it's all hiking and pot stuff. And then somebody made a stereotype about, and I'm not saying that's true, I'm just saying that's what the comments say. Somebody said that Colorado's native snobbery is a real thing. And I've never heard that stereotype about Colorado, that the people natively from the state are really snobby about being from Colorado. That feels like that.
About in general or about being from Colorado? Like we're the originals.
I think they're implying that it's like maybe not an original sentiment, but like the people that are from Colorado are talk about how great Colorado is versus like
Oh, okay.
the vibe outside of Colorado seems to be, yeah, Colorado seems cool. I think most people don't have a problem with Colorado, is like the sentiment that I get. You're like, yeah, seems nice. But like if you're from there, you're especially snobby about how great Colorado is. And I've never heard that stereotype before.
I hadn't either. It reminds me of two that I've heard. I'll talk about the Seattle freeze in a second because that's a thing. But like the thing about Ohio is that people from Ohio love to complain about Ohio in the same breath that they love to fiercely defend Ohio and why it's actually pretty awesome and underrated. Does that feel-
It's true, and also I'm convinced that they get excited about liking Ohio, but then they really don't want home values to go up, so then they just start bad mouthing it to like talk people out of moving to Ohio. So they're like, "Gosh, it's so nice that we have, Hocking Hills, but it's awful here, and don't come here because it's that. It's a very like isolationist. Just stay. People quit moving here. We don't need any more like urban sprawl out of our major cities."
We also get defensive about being considered a flyover state. So we're like, no, we're pretty cool. We got stuff.
Yeah, but Columbus. Yeah, that feels like it. And again, it's the same in the same breath that you're going to defend Ohio is the same breath that you're going to like, yeah, but we're really this thing is awful and you don't want to come here. I think what's weird is in Ohio, you also, I don't know how many other states have this. The spread of population between Cincinnati, Columbus, and Cleveland is actually kind of consistent. And then you have like the clear tier 2 cities that are like the Toledo BG and then like the Dayton, Springfield, and then like Akron, Canton, south of Cleveland. So the population is actually spread out pretty well. Unlike, half of Texas is like nothing and then El Paso. And so you have a lot on one side where like Columbus is pretty spread out. And I'm sure there are other states like that. But then it feels like if you go to Oklahoma, you're going to have like 2 cities to talk about. Or if you go to like Nebraska, you're going to have a couple cities. Something about Columbus or Ohio population being spread out. I don't know if that makes things better or worse when it comes to talking about how Ohio's great or awful. I think it depends on what you're talking about. But that always feels like a thing because it's not like when you're in certain states where you'd really only be from 1 or 2 places if you're from a city. There's a lot of places you could be from in Ohio. Even Athens in Southeast Ohio with Ohio University is like a little tiny little hub with the university attached to it that people are excited to be from. So that always feels like an interesting part of the conversation because you don't ever really know where people are from unless they have their slight little accent for Cleveland or Cincinnati or wherever. Does that feel true in Texas? Is like, do the major cities all kind of feel kind of balanced and you're like trying to figure out where people are from? Is it pretty clear cut? Is there a clear hierarchy and like, oh, well, this city's clearly the best one, but then these other ones are fine?
I mentioned a second ago, I feel like there's 4 main cities, San Antonio, Austin, Houston, and Dallas. Obviously, Houston's the best. And then there's like a lot of smaller cities. There's a lot of cities. Like you ask somebody where they're from, there's a good chance it's not from Houston. It's going to be from El Paso or Harlingen or Corpus Christi, or there's just a lot of cities. There's a lot of freaking people here.
Yeah,
they're from all over the place. And Texans, like you were mentioning how the folks in Ohio talk about Ohio. Texans love Texas. There is nobody as proud of their state as Texans. They put that thing on everything. They got the Texas flag and on everything. You can get Texas-shaped cookies or Texas-shaped cooking pans or whatever you want. They've got Texas everything. They are so proud of themselves.
Well, if they ever start talking bad about Texas, it might only be because they don't want people to move there. Because I think that's what happens in Ohio. It's
right. Well, they do say they would never say anything bad. They'll just say Texas is full. We're full. We're all full up.
Maybe that's a little more Southern honesty than Ohio is giving. We just need to say Ohio's full. It's nice, but full. So go to
Fly over.
Yeah.
Or you guys could be like, you guys could go to West Texas. There's plenty of land out there that you can have.
Right.
El
Just
Paso seems nice.
vote in New Mexico.
Yeah.
I remember after Yellowstone came out, people were like, locals were getting seriously ticked off. They're like, because it's so stunning in the show. And they're like, don't come here. There's nothing to see here. Forget everything you've seen in the show. But back to the Seattle Freeze. So I started going out there 4.5 years ago and I first heard about it. And it's basically the premise is that it's a contradictory experience for people who are from out of town, that it's quite difficult to make friends. People are seemingly nice, yet also at the same time kind of unfriendly and rude. And this could go back to the cold climate thing because it is up there in the Pacific Northwest, where people are just kind of out. They pretty much go to work. They don't need to make their work friends their friends. They're happy to just be work colleagues. There's also something about how split up all the suburbs are in Seattle. So there are all these lakes and bodies of water and different parts of the city that are kind of isolated from the rest. It's actually quite hard to get to the other little pockets. So they're like, wow, we're kind of just good with our town. We don't need to like mingle with you all. And there's this sort of like, if somebody ever says we should do something sometime, that's kind of like, move along, please. We're good. We don't need to. Whereas in the Midwest, we're very gregarious and outgoing and like make conversation with strangers in the grocery store, and we'll invite somebody at Kroger to our barbecue that day if you really hit it off with somebody in the frozen food section. So like it's kind of like a vibe. Just people are like, nah, we're good.
Can we talk about why you're in the frozen food section if you're having a barbecue?
Just for like, ice cream after. Okay.
That's perfect.
Do you have any more, Dylan, or can John tell us about some of the stereotypes from different parts of the
He
US?
should. I have one more that is a general American stereotype because this plays into something that annoys Corey. And so I want to bring it up. From a non-American about Americans, they really, really love their pets and animals. Is a very common non-American sentiment. So much so, subcontext, there's a lot of fur baby talk here in the United States. You both have traveled internationally. Is that a sentiment you pick up internationally, that people seem to have as much fervor for their pets as we do here in America?
I have not done as much international travel as Corey. I don't know. I'm not one of those guys that makes out with my pet, but I see it. I see it a lot. I see it on the planes. I'm like, you can't keep your Great Dane on the seat next to you. You got to do something with that thing. Put it in an overhead bin. I don't know. Can't stay there. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I haven't experienced it like that.
I've never seen a Dachshund Mom shirt in London. I've never seen a car in London with a I love my Shih Tzu on the back window ever, not once ever. People don't lead with that. Like here, it's like, my name's Stacy. I have 2 Bostons and I love them dearly. It's not like in the first paragraph of your introduction. Like, I don't know. It does seem like we lean heavy on our love of our pets.
Yeah.
And it's so annoying.
All right, I can be done, but that was fun. Thank you for
That is fun.
indulging me on some of the regional and national stereotypes.
All right, John, we're winding down. Just for funsies, give us like your top 3 to 5 fun stereotypes about travelers from different parts of the U.S. Like some of the notorious ones, or some of the, I can't wait to go here. They always bring snacks or whatever.
Okay. I feel like we've already touched on a lot of these. Probably the most notorious one has got to be California, especially Southern California. Yeah, they're just a little bit, like I said, they're a little bit snottier. They're a little more, they expect a little more out of you. There's a lot of flight attendants that avoid flying out there. Northern California is definitely better. Bay Area is a little bit, I don't know how to say it. I guess there's more people that don't speak English getting on the flight. A little more confused. It takes longer to board the flight. It's longer to get out of there, get where you're trying to go, because they don't understand. They don't know what's going on. The Midwest is usually, honestly, they're the friendly ones. Those are the nice ones, especially like the Ohios and the Nebraskas. especially some like the Omaha, smaller towns or smaller cities like that. I feel like those are always the friendliest people getting on the flight. You flying into some place like Salt Lake, you just know there's going to be like 800 kids, families, like tons of people getting on. Yeah, it's going to be like 7 adults, and then the flight's full, and it's just their kids.
A lot of khaki. A lot of khaki.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
New York,
chocolate milks for all the seats. Just
yes, all around. Yes, everybody
Gotta
wants
love-
hot cocoa.
Gotta love the Mormons.
Yes. New York, they're like I said, they're a little more sharp with their tone, but they're going to tell you what they want. They're not going to be. They just want their coffee regular, which for every new flight attendant that flies up there, you're having to explain to them when they say coffee regular, they just mean cream and sugar, because undoubtedly the first time you're going to take them a black coffee when they say coffee regular, because you ain't never heard of that before. At least I don't know if that's a normal thing for y'all, but if someone says coffee regular, when I was growing up, or even when I first came to Texas, I don't know what the hell they were talking about. I'm like, what's coffee regular? Like black coffee? It's like regular coffee?
we've been in a Starbucks era way too long to make any assumptions about what regular. You need to either say black or what you want in the coffee, because regular is meaningless unless you're a regular at a diner and you've
Right.
been 874 times for a cup of coffee and you say my regular coffee. That would be meaningless to me. So
I've never heard that before.
yeah, the fact that you've translated that as part of your like onboarding and training of new flight attendants is really funny.
It's 100% a thing in New
Wow.
York. Next time you're in New York, walk into some cafe or whatever and just say, I want a coffee regular, and they're going to give you coffee, cream, and sugar. That's mostly it. The Texans, for the most part, they drink a lot. That if you're flying from Dallas to Houston or whatever it is, it's going to be a short flight. Especially if it's a Friday, just plan to be working the whole time, because they're going to probably order 2 and 3 drinks at a time and be pounding them. That's mostly it.
Isn't that the stereotype in Seinfeld when George Costanza's hosting the baseball guys? Aren't they from Houston? And they're like big drinkers, and they're like, I think the whole stereotype is played out on Seinfeld.
Probably.
It's like the Astros, some guys from the Astros management or something. I'm gonna have to Google that later. That's awesome.
That sounds accurate.
Real quick, John, because I think you only texted us about this, but I wanted to clear up a question I asked a handful of episodes ago. I had never heard of the phenomenon of passengers bringing on snacks for the crew, little treats, little packaged chocolates or treats. I didn't even know that was a thing, first of all. Second part of that question, do you think then that those people expect special treatment, i.e. free drinks if they're not in like premium class or something? Does this happen? And do you think those people are just being nice from the Midwest? Or do you think they expect not maybe like a tit for tat, but like you might grease the skids a little bit with bringing treats on a plane?
I bring treats on a plane a lot when I'm flying outside of work. Do I expect? I expect a thank you. Have I gotten stuff back out of it? 100%. I've been moved up to first class. I've been given every snack and drink you can think of. There was one time it was just me and my wife, and there was it was me, my wife, and my parents. I think we were flying either to Mexico or back or something, and we brought on treats and stuff, but we were doing non-revenue, so it's basically open. Whatever seats are left, that's where we're sitting, standby. And I ended up in the very last row back there, and they were like, "Oh," they went to my wife and were like, "We have one seat in first class. Come on up." And she's like, "No, I'll stay back here by." She's like, "You don't refuse first class, sweetheart." She was like, "Okay." So she went up to first class.
Love you, honey.
Pampered. Yeah, my dad got moved up to the exit row with all the leg room, my dad and mom, and I'm sitting in the back, and I'm like, what the hell just happened? I'm back here by the toilet. But then she came by with the cart and was like, "What do you want?" I was like, "I guess I'll just have a Jack and Coke or something." She put like 5 of them little bottles on my tray, a couple cans of soda, every snack she had on the cart. I was just like, that's what I'm talking about.
Nice.
But for the most part, if you are nice to your flight attendants, especially if you bring a treat, they're going to be nice to you. We don't have that kind of stuff to offer on my airline, but I am 100% giving you free drinks.
Okay, so it does work. It is common, and it does work.
And we don't care if you want something free out of it. We just like candy.
Yeah.
But you probably can't accept like somebody's brownies that they made from home on a styrofoam plate. I'm assuming you're not going to want to try, especially if they're from Colorado.
If they show up with like a baggie with some cookies in it, for the most part, we're gonna be like, oh, we'll take them. Well, thank you, but probably aren't getting. I'm a fat guy. I'll probably eat them, but most people are gonna be like, oh, thank you, and then they're gonna get tossed at some point because we want them. We just don't know anymore. But 18 years ago when I started, everybody's eating them. Now it's just a different world we live in.
Yeah.
Well, now people know, and now if they're nice, and if they think about bringing some prepackaged snacks, they might get a little better flight out of the idea.
Wait, two more follow-up questions. So, the first of which is there a quality of gift hierarchy if it's candy that was purchased right from the airport, right outside, like that this is from the gift shop that's like right beside where they boarded and they just bought it, versus if somebody brought something that's clearly not from the airport, a lot more thought went into it. Do you view those differently, or are you like, hey, I'm just glad to be getting some Skittles? Like,
so I view them differently in the sense that I like Ghirardelli better than I do Hershey's Kisses. But almost always when we get candy, it's from the airport. You can tell. It's like, and we don't really care. Obviously, we're like, oh, it's the good chocolate, but we're not going to treat the passenger any different. They brought on something when 140 other people didn't.
Yeah.
But we do every once in a while. You can tell is outside the airport. We'll get gift cards from people. Like they'll have a stack of $5 Starbucks gift cards or something, and they give them out to the crews, and you can tell that it's just something they do all the time, and that's cool.
Nice. I figured it was probably like just glad to have any nice treat, but like it might be like, oh, people always buy the crappiest cheap candy from the airport, and we're chucking that with the homemade cookies because it's like, no thanks, we don't.
Yeah, no, there's no cheap candy at the airport.
All right, cool. Also, I don't think we've said one thing about Florida, so we need at least one story about something funny that happened in a Florida airport or Florida passenger. I feel like we've hit the West Coast, we've hit Texas, we've hit the Midwest, we've hit the Northeast. There's got to be at least one funny Florida related story that you can tell. That's just a silly stereotype, or just it happened to be in Florida.
I mean, they made an entire show called A Florida Man.
Right.
How many insane news stories start with?
That's what I'm saying. For all of the flack Florida gets is like crazy Florida man, there's got to be some story we can tell to joke a little bit about our peninsula brethren.
Put me on the spot. I don't know if I can think of an actual story, but they definitely have their own stereotype. For one, we know that there's going to be, if such coming from the Northeast, there's going to be 800 wheelchairs going into Florida.
Yes.
And most of the time, like I say, there's 17 wheelchairs going on, and there's one coming off. Like, they all got them lined up, and all of a sudden, they're sitting out there, and they're like, is there any more wheelchair passengers? And nope, they all walked off. I'm like, that was a miracle flight. We laid hands on them, killed them all. We're all good to go. So that's one of the stereotypes. The other one is that Florida people are just a little bit crazy.
Yeah.
And there's always a ton of kids going in and out of Orlando.
Sure. Yep.
Yeah, I don't know how anybody can stand being based there. That's one of our hubs. But yeah, a specific story, I can't think of one off the top of my head.
We'll definitely share one from our Facebook group from the middle for the middlers to make up for our lack of story. That's good. John, thanks for joining us, man. We love hanging out with you. Thanks for filling in for Kendall, who's not in Florida, because we know how much he hates it. He's in Myrtle Beach with the fam this week, and so we really appreciate you being our third chair while we hang out. Congrats on your most recent competition. We know you're going to crush the next one. And Dylan, why don't you tell the fine folks about Artiest Man?
If you don't know what Artiest Man is, shut up. You need to find out. Go to artiusman.com. Use promo code The Middle as your punishment for not knowing who they are. You need to put several $100s worth of these things into your cart. Use promo code The Middle at checkout. You'll save 25% off that big order. But then something amazing is going to happen. An incredible boutique of gifts will arrive at your home, a la bathroom things, candles, beard oils, all kinds of great products because Artius Man is a really great partner of ours out of Central Ohio, and they make really, really great stuff that started with beard oils that feature essential oils, and it's all small batch made here in the United States. So if you like supporting awesome businesses, it helps them, it helps us, it's going to help you, and we gave you 25% off your first order. So check out Artius Man, that's ARTIUSMAN.com, promo code the middle. Get a bunch of stuff. Father's Day's coming up, Mother's Day's coming up. Those are things people you're going to need gifts for. So just order it now and you'll thank yourself later.
Yeah. And get yourself a From the Middle t-shirt.
Yeah, and get yourself a Masters of the Brisket t-shirt.
Woo! Oh, I need
Details.
that. I'm going to go order one. I need that for sure.
Details below. All right. John, cheers, bro.
Thanks,
Thanks,
bud.
man. That was
Beers
really
are all
fun.
empty. Cheers, brother.